Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
It's time for the Bonnie Sher Show, a whirlwind of wit, wisdom, celebrity, and the boomer life. With a little bit of this and a lot of that and so much more you don't want to miss, here's Bonnie.
Hello and welcome. New friends, old friends from near and afar. I'm Bonnie Sher. I'm your host today. Pardon me. Thank you for tuning in. And I ask you this every week, and I'm tenacious, so I'm going to say to you, if you have a question or comment, don't be afraid. Call in. We're very accepting here of everybody's calls. Just kidding. Everybody who's listening, I think I meant. But I'm still not sure. Before we get this show on the road, I would like to take a second to acknowledge Grammy-winning artist Wayne Cobham for my Super Duper Hero theme song. Thank you, Wayne. And, of course, to Corey Bowen from Crown and Anchor Jewelry for providing me with the jewelry that I wear on this show in exchange for this promotional consideration. That was a big sentence. I'm getting to be a big girl. You see that? I can almost make a whole sentence. Yeah. And I've only had this much coffee. But moving on. So let's go back. So, okay, in order to reach Corey, Corey's on Etsy as Crown and Anchor Jewelry. If you can't find him, go ahead and send me a shout to Bonnie at BonnieSher.com, and I'll be happy to hook you up. So now, okay, we did all of that. I did that. Okay, I know what I got into now. There's this terrific person who's here with me today, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Jim Colucci, or are we Jim? Oh, we're Jim.
You're good.
Yeah, and let me tell you a little more. Not only is he a wonderfully delicious person, he's a wonderfully creative and delicious author. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So please, ladies and gentlemen, say hi to Jim Colucci.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Bonnie.
Oh, you're such a dear. Well, speaking of dear, when you were on with me last time, we spoke about the book, the Golden Girls book from behind. I mean, give me the whole title.
Golden Girls Forever is the name of my book from 2016.
Isn't this about From Behind the Lanai?
Well, you're right. The subtitle is it's Golden Girls Forever, an unauthorized view behind the lanai.
Sorry, I didn't know that by heart, but I'm lucky I found my way here today. But what I'd like to talk to you about today, and if we have time, we'll go back to the other book, what he said. So there's a book about Will and Grace, fabulously uncensored. Not my term, his, but it's wonderful. As a matter of fact, now I get to do my Vanna White. This is the book. If you don't know, what Jim gives us in both of these books is a wonderful insight into these characters, these situations. I have friends that can name the scenes. That's how and how we identified each with a different character for what, but these characters. And so I'm going to shut up now. And first thing I want to know is, did you get hit with a smart stick, how did you come up with the idea to do this?
If I'd gotten hit with the smart stick, I wouldn't have gone into being a book author, because the books are a labor of love these days. They're not a big money-making enterprise, but
Sort of like being a cabaret singer?
much like being a cabaret singer, I would think. But I was so honored to be able to do this book and to write about the Golden Girls. Really, probably my two favorite shows of all time, and I got to write books about each of them. And that's part of that is luck. Part of that is luck that no one had tackled the Golden Girls yet, and part of that is NBC hired me to do this Will and Grace book. So that was, that was a great experience.
Wow,
being able to do that and go on set with them. Unlike with the Golden Girls, which was well out of production by the time I started doing my research, Will and Grace was in production when I got hired to do this book. And so it was like being asked, do you want to go to fantasy camp? Are you a huge fan of Will and Grace? Want to go hang out there for a month and watch them and interview them?
That sounds like fun. No, I don't.
Yeah, no, who would want to do that? So it was, the funny thing is, too, if you know the original show of Will and Grace, there was a running gag that they finally paid off when Kevin Bacon guest starred on the show. But there was a running gag that Jack had been stalking Kevin Bacon. And in the episode where Kevin Bacon finally appeared, he inadvertently hires Jack and says, the first thing you need to do is find my stalker. And I feel like when I got hired by Will and Grace, it was the same thing. I already was obsessed with the show. I had written spec scripts of the show in my own writing career. I would have loved to have been hired on the show, and I had let them know that when the few times I had met them in person. And so then to get hired to write a book about the show, I felt like they're going to realize that this is like Kevin Bacon hiring his own stalker, because I got to go authorized and hang out with them for a month, and it was wonderful. What a great experience.
I'm sort of that is something that you can carry around with you and still feel that kind of warmth, which comes through in your writing. You write so lovingly about the characters, and truthfully, and have you seen? Well, I'm not going to put these words in my mouth, but I might presume that you've seen the reincarnated Will and Grace.
I have, yeah. I'm so impressed with it.
I have. I feel like, I don't know where those years went, but we're right back here. The timing is the same. It's just, it's so comforting. It's like seeing old friends that moved really far, and they had no Zoom or
no Skype.
Or Skype. No, I've just been told I should be a Zoom girl.
Oh, okay.
And no, that wasn't a commercial message. Just telling you what I heard. Would you consider doing another book?
Yes. In fact, I'm trying to get NBC on board to reissue this book, because the one downside to writing this original book, as I said, it's called Will and Grace Fabulously Uncensored, while the show was in production, is that I covered seasons 1 through 6 of the original 8. And so seasons 7 and 8, I always wanted to go back once the show was ending and really cover them in the same depth and be able to really be complete about my love of the show. And that never happened. But now that the show is back, there's even more impetus to say, let's really reissue, add to this, because so many things happened both in season 7 and season 8 of the original show, and now season 9, as we're calling it, of this show, that are really important and deserve to be talked about. Great guest stars, great storylines, really timely storylines that we're going to be talking about for a long time. And so I don't want to not cover that.
I think that would be incredible.
Yeah, so stay tuned. I'm working on that.
Speaking of stay tuned. When we get back, I have to take a little break now, but when we come back, lots more to talk about. Stay with us. We'll be back.
Your life story is more than the things you do. It's a story built on the moments you make today and the impact you have on others. How big is your story going to be? Live your legend.
plans, moments you're looking forward to. What if they were stolen from you by Alzheimer's? This cruel disease costs Americans more than $170 billion a year and could cripple Medicare in the near future. The Alzheimer's Association is taking action and has been a part of every major advancement. But we won't rest until we have a cure. You have plans. Help the Alzheimer's Association protect them. Act now. Go to alz.org.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way. It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Bonnie Sher Show, Boomer Life. My first guest here today is author Jim Colucci. We've been having a good time thinking about the old days, now segging into the new days. And because I'm saying it's a good time, I mean it's a good time. And what's a good read? Personally, I think it's reading all about Will and Grace, loving it the way we have, and this is fabulously uncensored. Take a look, buy the book. In Jewish, we would say, give a cook to the book, take a look. Done. Jim, now that I got through that, I'm not Lucy, okay? I haven't gotten to that color yet.
Oh.
I went through my whole life saying, I never want to be a blonde. All right, now I'm going to hear from every blonde in town. It's a lot of blondes. Oh, look, a blonde.
You can't, in L.A., there's a lot of blondes.
I know. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move past that, seeing as I don't see any blondes here on the cover. It's a conversation for another time. What must it have been like already being in love with these characters as you watch them on that screen to then be a part of their daily lives, giving what that exchange were they? I mean, did they open the doors?
They really did, and I honestly didn't expect them to. I really was naive in that I thought that the publishing industry part of writing a book about a TV show would be all gentlemen and lovely and everybody would treat me with respect, and I thought the TV people would be more difficult, and I was wrong on both counts. The publishing people were not always easy to work with, but I mean, and that can happen in any industry obviously, but the Will and Grace people were lovely, and when it says fabulously uncensored as the subhead of this book, it really is. I really observed some things I probably shouldn't have seen, some of which went in the book, some of which didn't, only because it would be too long to explain. It's not like I really left any major bombshell secrets that they don't all hate each other or anything like that. I mean, it really was a loving set. But I really did still feel like I was seeing things that they were giving me so much access that they weren't even realizing they were giving me because they forgot I was there after a while. And that is a great feeling when you're a fan and an author, because you feel like, oh, I'm not just their mouthpiece. I'm really going to tell fans what I would want to know. And I loved that. That was one of the best parts, really, the uncensored access.
And are there any shows currently that you would be interested in providing an up-close and personal look at?
You know, one of the things about writing about a current show is that it's publishing and television have such different timetables. For a book, you need to hand a book in like a year before it gets published. And television, you can't write about something a year in advance. They haven't written it yet. And so the difficult part of doing this book was, as I was covering that 6th season of Will and Grace, it was still in production and I had to hand a book in. And so I don't think I'd want to do that to myself again with a current show. I mean, I keep talking about maybe doing a Big Bang Theory book someday, but that show, luckily, I'm so happy, is still on the air and in production. So I really, after Will and Grace, that's one of the reasons I said, let's write about my other favorite show, The Golden Girls, and now I'm writing about The Love Boat. And it's fun because when it's in the past, you can talk about it with perspective and what it means to today. And I really feel that you don't get that if the moment it's on the air. But I love paying tribute to Will and Grace.
I
no
love
matter
the
what.
pathos of that also, because it is such a dear, fond memory.
Yes, right, exactly.
I don't know that a dear fond right now, which we all know life can change in a second.
It can, and a show can get canceled, or a Bill Cosby scandal can happen, and what if a scandal happens that
I thought you were going to say about me, I'm too old for a scandal
but
me.
But it can ruin the memory of a show. It could ruin a current show if that show is on the air.
I'd say.
So what I like about doing Golden Girls and Love Boat is we know that they have earned their place in our hearts, and we can give it the proper perspective. So I'm enjoying that. But that being said, I would love to reissue the Will and Grace book, and while it's still in production again, so I'll do it again.
This is becoming a real thing. I'm beginning to see the light.
Yes.
Now you can really see it, right? You can see it. Do yourself a favor, really. As a matter of fact, if you don't already have the Golden Girls, then I suggest you hop over to that place that starts with an A that not only sells a zillion books, but ink, I have the smartest, bestest people around here. Yes, I remember to go to the bathroom before I came out of the show. But they love me. They really love me. And you know what, Jim Colucci? Come back anytime. Be on the air. Just come by. I happen to know there are sunflower seeds in the green room.
That is tempting, but I'll come by. Sunflower seeds or no? For you, Bonnie, I don't even need the seeds.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Colucci.
Thank you.
Save me a minute. Oh, whoops. Okay, I did that. I need a bigger budget is what I need.
I don't know. This is a nice setup.
Well, if I could see what I've written here, it would be nicer. But then I have to try and fit my glasses in under there, and I just can't. So, are you going to sing for us? Oh, what's happening now? See, and what's coming up next? But before, no, you missed something. See, all right, get serious now. Here's the thing. I really, really would love to acknowledge the fine work of the Diabetes Research Institute. I encourage you to please support their efforts. You can visit them online at diabetesresearch.org. .org. Diabetesresearch.org. Now, Tony, our song of the day is coming up next, which is Volare, sung by the swinging Thas Shipley. Take it away.
Type 1 diabetes can be living in anyone.
Type 1 diabetes is when your pancreas doesn't produce insulin. It's not caused by your diet. It's not caused by anything you did.
Type 1 diabetes can be very serious.
Blindness, amputation.
Learn more about type 1 diabetes.
Help support JDRF finding a cure.
T1D looks like my brother.
T1D looks like a friend.
Type 1 diabetes looks like me.
Penso che un sogno così non ritorni mai più. Vedi poncevo le mani e la faccia di blu. Poi d'improvviso venivo nel vento rapido e cominciavo a volare nel cielo infinito. Volare, oh dipinto di blu, felice di stare qua giù. E volavo, felice di una notte del sole ed ancora più su, mentre il mondo pian piano spariva lontano laggiù. Una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me. Volare, oh, cantare, oh, nel blu, dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù. Nel blu degli occhi tuoi blu, felice di stare qua giù. E continuo a ballare felice più notte del sole va ancora più su, mentre il mondo pian piano scampare negli occhi tuoi blu. La tua voce è una musica dolce che suona per me. Volare, oh, cantare, oh, nel blu, negli occhi tuoi blu, felice di stare qua giù. Nel blu, negli occhi tuoi blu, felice di stare qua giù con te.
Pretty terrific. I'm looking over here in this camera. So hello then. Now I'm going to look at the computer. Welcome back to the Bonnie Sher Show. My co-host for this segment is Charlie O'Connell. Charlie is from the great state of Connecticut. Charlie has been on with us before. And Charlie, of course, is a type 1 diabetic. So, hello, Charlie. Thank you very much for sitting in with us again today. Charlie, for those who didn't see your last show with me, can you give us a little bit of background about how you remember it all starting and share your story?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and it's great to be here with you again, Bonnie. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was right at the end of high school. And, just the way that it worked out for me, my diagnosis with type 1 diabetes happened in between finishing high school and going off to college. And I was lucky enough to be a very successful high school athlete and lucky enough to be recruited to play sports in college. And just the way it worked out for me, my first time participating and competing in competitive athletics with type 1 diabetes was the very first day of football practice at the University of Pennsylvania my freshman year. And it didn't go well. It was, in fact, it was a disaster. And the irony of that whole situation was, University of Pennsylvania is a world-class institution with the finest doctors and trainers available. And the bottom line was nobody had the first clue how to help me. And, with very basic type 1 diabetes management scenarios, like, breakfast is at 7 a.m., practice starts at 8 a.m., how much insulin do you take? Those types of situations, which every person living with type 1 diabetes understands how challenging that is. I had no guidance. The very next day, I would test my blood sugar in the middle of practice and my blood sugar would be 290. And it was time for tackling drills. Well, what do you do? Or the very next day after that, my blood sugar would be 55 and it would be time to do wind sprints. What do you do? And that was a very, very challenging situation. At the time, I felt a lot of frustration and resentment towards my type 1 diabetes, and I felt like type 1 diabetes had really hindered my athletic performance in college. Many, many years later, when I was able to honestly reflect on that whole situation, I was able to understand that it wasn't so much that diabetes had hindered my athletics as much as athletics had actually helped my diabetes. And that when I honestly reflected on it, the time that I felt the best, the time that I looked the best, the time that I had my best diabetes results was when I was on a daily rigorous athletic regimen. The problem for me was I had come to associate the fear of hypoglycemia.
I can hear that. Yeah.
And very, very common thing for everybody living with type 1. Once you go low a couple of times, and I'm talking about from personal experience now, the anxiety and the fear of low blood sugar really came to dominate my whole attitude and relationship with exercise. And I had actually gotten to the point where I stopped exercising because of this fear and anxiety. And originally, I set out on a personal quest to deal with that. I came to the conclusion from myself personally that I was like, you know what? I can't let this fear and anxiety dominate my relationship anymore with fitness and exercise. And I just set off on a personal quest to start to figure these things out for myself. And that frustration with the lack of guidance and that frustration with the lack of available resources to help me really fueled me to become a true expert in exercise, fitness, physiology, and diabetes. And I was on that quest personally for about 3 years. And what ended up happening was I went for a diabetes checkup with my doctor and at the Yale Diabetes Center. And I had the best A1C result that I had in over 10 years. And the doctor said to me, "Wow, Charlie, this is great. How did you achieve this?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, I've figured some things out about exercise that have really allowed me to let go of the fear of hypoglycemia. And ultimately, that's enabled me to have much better control of my diabetes." At which point the doctor responded, "Wow, have you ever thought of helping anybody else? Because that's all anybody talks about when they come in here." And it was just the way that she said that's all anybody talks about when they come in here, that I had a switch in my understanding of this whole problem. And the switch was I switched from a me problem to a we problem. And I realized that if I was struggling with this and I love exercise, then this lack of resources is crippling to anybody who just wants to basically go to the gym and not experience a crash in their glucose levels.
Which is definitely a reason to be fearful of going to the gym. I mean, we can come up. I mean, not everybody is a lover of exercise the way you are. Some of us need a little more of a push. Well, when you're looking for that motivation, then you get, but I may have a hypo. I better not do it. The flab will just have to lay there another day or two. This is such invaluable information. And again, we're not alone. Every one of the T1s who are listening to us now know exactly what you're saying. That's what I love about having T1s. I mean, it does. It takes a T1 to know a T1. Yeah. But I'm going to take you farther another second and fill the audience in. The last time Charlie was here with me, not only did we have a wonderful conversation on air, where I believe our audience learned so much and were intrigued to learn more. And to me, that's a sign of a great interview. But what you weren't privy to is a gaggle of us got together in the green room. Well, it's really orange, but they call it the green room. And I don't know. Charlie started to speak. I'm talking to you like Annette here. Charlie started to speak on something which I had never even heard of before. And it was so brilliant that I wanted to share it all with you. This is something which Charlie refers to as the parking lot. Okay.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there, and I'm sure there are some who have no idea what I'm talking about, please let us know what you were talking about. I just thought that was too cool for school.
Okay, sounds great, Bonnie. So I really appreciate this opportunity to share this with your audience. So what we were talking about in that green room was understanding where and how glucose is stored in your body is really one of the fundamental elements of information that anybody living with diabetes has to understand if they're going to have success managing the storage of glucose in their body. And we have a fun analogy to help people understand that, and it's called the parking lot analogy. So there are 4 places in your body where sugar is actually stored. And you can think of those places like parking lots. The 4 parking lots are your brain, your liver, your muscle tissue, and your fat tissue. Now, your brain is like the VIP parking lot. That is the first parking lot that any glucose derived from food will travel to when you eat it. And your brain parking lot should always be full. There should never be a time when you have empty spaces in your brain parking lot. And if you do have empty spaces in your brain parking lot, that is when you experience hypoglycemia. You may have seen that funny Snickers commercial where the Snickers commercial says, "Hey, you're not acting like yourself. Have a Snickers."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a funny way of describing when your brain parking lot has a couple empty spaces in it. Okay? So your brain is the most important place for sugar in the body, and that is the actual first place, the first parking lot where sugar will go when you eat it. So using that funny Snickers as an example, when you eat a Snickers, the glucose that's derived from that Snickers immediately travels to your brain through your blood vessels and checks, are there any spaces empty in here? And if there are, the glucose will go in there. If there's not, if your brain parking lot is full, the glucose molecule will travel to the next parking lot, which is your liver. Now, your liver can store between 70 and 80 grams worth of carbohydrate in it. And just for a frame of reference, that's like 2 or 3 granola bars worth of sugar. Now, if a sugar molecule or a glucose molecule shows up to your liver parking lot and there are spaces available, the sugar molecule will go in there. But if there's no space available in your liver parking lot, it doesn't matter how much insulin is present in your body. If there's no space in your liver parking lot for sugar, there's no space for sugar in your liver parking lot. And if that's the case, the sugar molecule will travel to the next parking lot, which are your muscles. Now, your muscles are very different than your liver for 2 reasons. The first reason is you can change the size of your muscle parking lot, and you can change it significantly. you can store anywhere between 350 to 800 grams worth of carbohydrate in your muscles, all depending on how large your muscles are. The more you exercise, the larger your muscle parking lots become, the more space is available for sugar molecules. And vice versa, the less you exercise, the smaller your muscle parking lots are, the less space you have available for the storage of sugar in your muscles. And again, the same thing applies. If there's no space available in your muscle parking lot, it doesn't matter how much insulin is present in your body, no more sugar can be stored in your muscle parking lot if there's no room. And if that's the case, the sugar molecule will travel to the last parking lot. And the last parking lot is your fat tissue. And you can think of your fat tissue as parking lot as like the long-term parking at LAX. Okay? It is the last parking lot on the road. You're going to check the first 3 for availability before you get there. But if there's no space in the brain, liver, or muscles, the sugar molecule will be deposited into the fat parking lot. And your fat parking lot is made up of something called adipocyte tissue. And adipocyte cells are the actual receptors in the body that receive glucose stored inside fat. And when that receiving happens, that glucose is changed from a glucose molecule to a triglyceride. And what a triglyceride is actually a liquefied form of glucose that gets deposited into a adipocyte cell like water into a cup. Now, generally speaking, the average human being has about 4 billion adipocyte cells. And when 4 billion adipocyte cells are filled up with triglycerides, that represents about 30 pounds worth of fat. So 30 pounds worth of fat is actually the maximum for the average human being in terms of the ability to store fat. Now, why is this so important? Well, there's 2 primary reasons why this is so important. The first thing has to do with understanding what the cause of type 2 diabetes is. Okay? So generally speaking, for the vast majority of people that suffer from type 2 diabetes, the reason why they've developed type 2 diabetes is because they have filled up their fat parking lot and there is literally nowhere for the sugar to go. And this is why exercise has such a profound impact on reducing and reversing type 2 diabetes. Because as soon as you start exercising, you start emptying out your muscle parking lots. And when you empty out your muscle parking lots, you now create the space for the storage of excess glucose by excess insulin. And that's why we see over and over again, as soon as a person with type 2 diabetes starts exercising, they immediately see a drop in their glucose levels, and they can take less medication. They can potentially even completely come off of medication. Now, that same exact reason, explains why people with type 1 diabetes experience something called post-exercise hypoglycemia. And what post-exercise hypoglycemia means is low blood sugar after you've exercised. And the reason why that happens is just like when a type 2 diabetic exercises, they empty out their muscle parking lots, and now they create space for sugar. The same thing happens for a type 1 diabetic. When a type 1 diabetic exercises, they empty out their muscle parking lots, creating space for the storage of glucose. Now, you may have heard a very common analogy, which is insulin is like a key that opens up the cell. Okay? That's a very common analogy that is used to help people understand what insulin does. And that is true. Insulin is like a key that opens up the cell. But insulin does not determine how much space is available in the cell. So for a type 1 diabetic, let's just imagine for a second that you had one space available in your muscle parking lot for glucose. It's going to require one molecule of insulin to open up that muscle cell for the one molecule of sugar to go in. But if that represents all the space, the muscle cell will close, and it will require another molecule of insulin to open up the next parking lot. Okay? Whereas if you have a muscle parking lot that has, for example, 10 spaces available, it's still going to require one molecule of insulin to open the cell, but then many molecules of sugar can go into that cell with just that one molecule of insulin. And understanding that is really, really the key to getting rid of post-exercise hypoglycemia, which is this terrible, terrible problem that afflicts so many people living with type 1. And probably, Bonnie, many people in your audience have intuitively understood that if they exercise, they have to take less insulin. But what's very, very helpful is actually understanding that process so that you're not just kind of randomly taking less insulin, but you're fundamentally understanding that when you exercise, when you empty out your muscle parking lots, you actually are creating more space for the storage of sugar with less insulin.
I knew there was a reason I was so anxious to have you back on the show. Again, I don't know how I would have ever, or most of us would have come to that, but when you talk about it that way, it's a different approach. And it's motivating is what it is. It's okay. Yep. I'm powerful enough. I can clear the parking lot and let in, or make sure it's filled, and like that. Charlie, thank you again for being with me today. Before I let you go, though, please tell people how they can follow you.
Yeah, so, well, Bonnie, it's been a great honor to be with you, and I'm happy to be anytime. So I have founded a company called Glucose Zone. You can see I'm wearing my Glucose Zone shirt. So Glucose Zone is a company dedicated to helping people with diabetes reach their fitness goals. And what we do is we offer exercise solutions based on your real-time glucose levels, and we offer guidance for reaching your fitness goals with the understanding that, you know what, exercise for people living with diabetes is different. And you need very, very specific information in order to eliminate fluctuations in glucose levels during and after exercise. And for people living with type 1, that is our primary goal, to offer the guidance, information, and support that they need to eliminate fluctuations in their glucose levels so that they can now start to focus on their fitness goal and not have that fear and anxiety about hypoglycemia or confusion about hyperglycemia that can be so crippling to actually enjoying exercise.
Well, You heard it here, folks, and it made a lot of sense even to me. So, Charlie, be well. Take care of yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Charlie O'Connell, ladies and gentlemen, I'll get your name. Well, and now on to my soapbox. You might remember my soapbox. But before we talk about my soapbox, I think my parking lot is full. At least the one in my brain. What I wanted to say at this juncture is if any of you Type 1s out there would like to be my guest Type 1 co-host, it's very simple. All you have to do, send me an email, bonnie@bonniesher.com. You do that, I'll get right back to you. We'll find a date. Now I'm climbing up on my soapbox, which is, of course, my take. It is my take. I know it's my take on who's to be congratulated. And, of course, my shout down is to who should really kind of be ashamed. So let's start out with my shout out today is to the students of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Their children have acted with such poise and such understanding and such heart. They give me hope in a time where I see very little hope. And never again. Hashtag never again. Believe it or not, that was a shout out. Now for the shout down. In the wake, with the 96 hours, the Florida State House of Representatives voted down a measure to even discuss the implementation of the assault weapons ban. They don't even want to talk about it. That's it. Well, that's my show for today. I'd like to thank my guests, author Jim Colucci. Catch his books, and of course, my T1 co-host Charlie O'Connell for keeping my eyes open, and apparently the garage space. The parking lot space. See, I knew I could blow that. Just don't give me a shot. In the meantime, until next week, my last thought today is of Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy was my mentor. He was my dear friend. And I like to tribute him in every one of my shows. And so, again today, Sammy, this one's for you. See you next week.
No comment.
Baby.
No, that was good. He had a